So I'm pleased to welcome you in our university. Is it your first visit to Kazan? And what's your impressions from the Kazan Federal University?
First, I wanted to thank you, all the actors of Kazan University, to welcome the Madrid Stock Exchange University here. And effectively, if it's my first visit to Kazan, it's the 6th time I come to the Russian Federation.
Okay, I will begin from the questions of Russia. Today is the official anniversary of 25 years of economic market economy in our country, as you know. And principally, if we're talking about financial markets, he has gone the same way, about 20-year-old development since 1995. And what's your estimation about developing Russian stock exchange market if we compare with the market in Madrid, for example, which has history from the 19th century?
Well, first, to answer your question, I need to precise you that my views do not reflect necessarily the view of my institution, but obviously as a faculty, I can provide my views, okay? But they will be considered as an independent. Same as for any author of IMF, World Bank, this is something that is kind of disclaimer we need to see. So what we can say is that concerning the first part of your question, basically Russian economy has suffered huge turmoil in the 1990s, and a couple of years ago with the evolution of the ruble it has been tough as well. I think things are moving slightly better, and I think the recovery might be on the way. Now, many issues need to be controlled, because trust is a harsh variable to control, and it will be fundamental to move ahead. On the other hand of your question, the evolution of the Madrid Stock Exchange, you may know that the evolution of the IBEX 35, of the major 35 companies in the stock exchange, it has been harshly attacked since 2007, because the value of the IBEX 35 has been divided by 2. Nevertheless, Spain is the country that grows more at this point. And what is more interesting even is that on top of the blue chip, you've got always more SMEs that are eager to provide some shoot of growth, as they would say from Systema, for instance.
If continue, can Russia compete on the global financial markets? I mean, we have a history of developing financial markets only 20 years, and it's very difficult to compete. What is needed in terms of developing financial markets now to compete on the global financial markets to Russia?
I think 3 elements are needed at least. Transparency, in terms of security for investors, and 3, I think diversification of the of Russian blue chip companies. At this point, Russian companies are still too much dependent on the commodity sector, and I think that the next wave of growth should necessarily imply the creation of blue chip out of these out of these sectors, be it oil, gas, platinum, nickel, and so on. So this is, for me, this is what needs to be managed.
Does we have the conditions to provide transparency and security in our society in Russia?
Legal security, you mean? I think there's some. I think it's feasible to move towards it and to increase it. What is important is to give constant signals and to show that the transparency index are moving up. So becoming the country where you may have most transparency in the world at this point may not happen from today to tomorrow. It will require some time, but market will value that efforts have been brought up at this point.
Thank you. So I now will talk about the world economy with you. During this year, investors were under influenced by such unpredictable events in global economy, such Brexit, for example, in the June 2016, and the presidential election in USA, where Donald Trump has won. And what's more important, that many experts were predicted the storm on the financial markets after these events, but we didn't see such changes in the financial markets. What's, from your point of view, impact of the global events on the geopolitical events to the financial markets in the world?
Let me start first with one issue, a global statement. I would say that when you look at the period 2003-2013, it was pretty easy for investors to forecast evolution, be it going up or down. From 2013, as the chief economist of Morgan Stanley stipulated it, we've entered in a decade of uncertainties. And as such, it will be difficult for investors to determine what's going to happen. And we can see that many people consider that it was unpredictable to see Brexit happen. It was difficult to forecast that Trump will win. In fact, Hillary Clinton had more than 600,000 voters more, but due to the fact about great electors, nobody forecasted. So there are some elements that it is out of the box, issue one. Issue two, at this point, concerning the Brexit, as you refer to it, okay, there's the evolution of the pound versus the euro, the dollar has been dramatic, but it's based on expectation, future expectation, and they're not fully irrational at this point. It's not based on any fact. We'll have to wait until March to know a little more when May is going to articulate Chapter 50. Then we need to keep in mind that the vast part of European countries do have interest in having a sharp downturn in UK for a simple reason. If Catalonia in Spain wants to become independent, if they see that you've got a huge crisis in UK, it will stop their willingness to become independent. Same for northern Italy and so on. About Trump, it's a bit more difficult. I was exchanging with some Bloomberg analysts yesterday, and basically we had the point there where who's going to win about it? I mean, in terms of domestic demand, Chinese demand has went down from the crisis that they faced at the Shanghai Stock Exchange. So you've got two areas where you may have domestic demand. You've got US and Europe. Take into consideration the difficulty to sign the agreement, the free trade agreement between Canada and Europe. It's easy to forecast that they will not manage to have an agreement, or it will be extremely costly. So difficult. So it means that US will go on one side, Europe will go on the other side, and major commercial war will be up, I guess. So uncertainties and major problem for companies to figure out where they will be investing with success.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And if you're talking about that Donald Trump, new president of USA, it's the fact that he's president now, and from his election plans to, I mean, he want to change the agreement with the different international organizations. He want to change internal policy in his country. Does this impact on the global markets? I mean, may we talk about the reglobalization process after the Donald Trump, the new president of the United States?
You know, it's really difficult to know what's going to happen with its candidature for a couple of reasons. One, we don't know what will be, who will be part of his administration. Mm-hmm. We will only know this in January, or maybe a little before. So there's too much uncertainty to refer to about it. I prefer not to say anything about this point, because it's you've got so many question marks. you've got so many different points of views that you can figure out anywhere in the media, that I don't want to add some turmoil with it, some noise with it.
Okay. Monetary policy of the central bank in the world. Since the 2008, it was a quantitative easing program in the USA, and now in the European Union also. European Central Bank is providing this policy. Does this help to really the world economy to step in the growing trend? Because if you know, I mean, monetary supply was very increased, but we didn't see any changes in the world GDP growth.
Here I will answer you by quoting McKinsey report of October 2015, stipulating that we may enter in, at least for major industrialized countries, we may enter a new phase of recession in which we basically don't know what's going to happen next, but when you enter in deflation period, it may last for 10 years more. So here it's a big issue because there's a problem to finance relevant investment project, and we don't know what's next. So flexibilization will be an issue, and on the other hand, portfolio investment may be the alternative in terms of arbitrage.
In conditions of very low and even negative interest rates in the world, which actions should help into the global economy to grow? So maybe we will talk about tax and budget stimulus, not monetary policy.
Yeah, but basically you've got a few issues there. You've got several scenarios. One, are we going to keep up having negotiation on between US and EU? If you say yes, it's obvious that some investment in some specific cluster may provide some good return on investment, but it will be really punctual, and I don't think it may work on. Increasing taxes will be devastating for SMEs. So again, you've got this disjunction between what you say in Russian, between the productive sphere and the financial sphere. And here, I don't think any improvement for the next 2 years, simply for an issue. Basically, I don't think that politicals are eager to provide the right solution for the taxpayers, for the citizens. They don't explain it, there's no pedagogy, so we're going to a lack of reforms. So it's not that what is the right solution, the problem is nobody is eager to make the right reforms. I insist on this because most of the time, I will quote a famous economist who was saying the sequencing of reforms. In my point, right now in the industrialized country, we're not at this point. The problem is, did we explain the reform in order for people to accept them? Because we know the right sequence. It's a huge difference.
Also, if you talk about monetary stimulus, what's your expectation of the Fed policy in December? How it will affect on the Russian markets, for example?
Well, here's the first point is that what will be the interaction between Yellen and Trump? Honestly, keeping in mind the political sympathies of Yellen, I don't truly know what may happen. It's extremely harsh to predict it. And it's not only about the Fed, it's about all institutions where the administration plays a huge role. Because Trump comes from nowhere at that point. So I read an article, it was in New York Times last week, and they were trying to figure out who will be bashing will be pushing Trump? Nobody knows. You've got really few issues. So, okay, you can say, will they keep negative interest? Will they keep up on this trend about low interest rate? Will they change the policy and so on? I guess you need to have several scenarios. One is that confrontation or opposition between Yellen and Trump. Second scenario, what's the issue in China versus US? Third issue, what's up concerning India? Can it be considered as an alternative playground in terms of growth? And when you play with this, you can figure it out. But the first point, it will be, it's the dilemma between players. How will Yellen and Trump interfere? And at this point, I'm not pretty optimistic either.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Let's move to the oil market. I want to ask several questions about this. 2 years, we see the oil market where it has changed. Oil price has down to 2 times, and but we also have seen that changed the same structure of the oil market. I mean, the balance between supply and demand, competition between shale oil and the usual oil, and so on. What is your estimation of this process? And if you're talking about the future, does this situation on the oil market where we see prices about $40 per barrel is a new reality, or we will see the changes on this market in the future?
Based on some estimation, shale gas will reach its peak in 2030. So I think that if there's no conflict, additional conflict in area where you've got some oil, there will we will have a moderate increase of oil prices of the Brent, and but not. I don't think it will go up for maxi will be 60-65 in the Brent. Now, in terms of players between OPEC, OPEC may control it in a much tighter way, so I think this will be the trend. Because don't forget that it will depend as well on the ability of Uber, Google, Apple to generate some cars with electricity. Sorry. So at this point, if some disruptive processes in terms of generating cars happen, well, this may provoke some major change. Mm-hmm. Now, will this change affect the world? No, they will affect only initially the industrialized countries, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I think there's such a need for cars powered by fossil energies that it's not going to change at this point in emerging countries.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we're almost at the end of the calendar year. This year was very difficult for the financial markets and the world economy. We saw some geopolitical issues, we saw some changes, we saw high volatility on the financial markets. And what you can say about this year? Maybe we see some trends which will happen, which will provide us to the better future in the financial market. I mean, 2017 year, what's your estimation to the 2017 development on the financial markets?
I think 2016 will be remembered as a year where politics and citizens can literally provoke a major turmoil to financial markets. And I think that Brexit and Trump election in US are the first signals of this change. Because in 2017, the real change we will see the impact of the real change in UK first, then in US. If they close the market, it can be a major problem in financing US companies, sorry. And then you've got plenty of countries in Europe with election. we don't know what's going to happen. Well, just to refer, in France there will be the election in May. Nobody knows what will happen. I wouldn't be afraid that there will be a major turmoil again. In Germany, Merkel is not so powerful. In Spain, it's been for 1 year without government. The coalition is extremely weak. And so this will affect investment in the sense that people will not use strong, basically the bed will be extremely weak in the sense that people will wait until the uncertainties diminished. So for me, 2017 will be a year of transition.
Thank you for your answers.
Okay, thank you so much for your question.